The doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened, and Ambassador James Walker stepped into the largest room he had ever seen. The chamber stretched for miles in every direction. Thousands of crystalline pods floated in the air, each one holding representatives from alien species that humanity had never imagined. Some were massive creatures with scales and claws. Others were beings made of pure light. A few looked like living shadows that moved without sound. 342 species had gathered here today. They had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They controlled 10,000 worlds and commanded fleets that could darken the skies of 100 planets. And they had summoned humanity to answer for its crimes. James walked alone across the central platform. He was 54 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple dark suit instead of the fancy robes that other ambassadors wore. Behind him, through the transparent walls of the station, Earth hung in the distance like a small blue marble. High Arbiter Velox watched from his ancient throne. He was a serpent-like creature wrapped in golden cloth. His species had led the council for 6 million years. He had watched empires rise and fall. He had seen proud civilizations turn to dust, but he had never seen a species quite like humanity. Ambassador Walker, Velox said, his voice carrying through the chamber, "You stand before this council, accused of terrible crimes. Your species has expanded beyond its borders. Your ships have entered restricted space. Your scientists have developed weapons that violate galactic law." James said nothing. He simply listened. "The Dravani Empire has demanded justice," Velox continued. He gestured toward a section of the chamber where massive insect-like creatures sat in their pods. They were 12 feet tall, covered in black armor, with bladed arms that could cut through steel. "They claim you have invaded their territory and killed their soldiers." The Dravani Supreme Commander rose from his seat. His name was Thrax, and he had conquered more worlds than any living being in the galaxy. His compound eyes fixed on James with pure hatred. "These mammals are vermin," Thrax declared. "They attacked our patrol ships without warning. They murdered 3,000 of our warriors. They have shown no respect for the natural order of this galaxy." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Species that had been conquered by the Dravani looked away in fear. Species that remained free shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to speak against the most powerful empire in known space. Velox raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador Walker, what do you say to these charges?" James looked at Thrax. Then he looked at the High Arbiter. Then he looked at the hundreds of alien species watching from their floating pods. And he smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was not a diplomatic smile meant to calm tensions. It was the smile of someone who knew something that nobody else in the room understood. "High Arbiter," James said calmly, "I appreciate the council taking time to hear this matter. It shows a level of respect that I did not expect." Thrax clicked his mandibles in confusion. This was not how prey species behaved. In all his centuries of conquest, he had seen fear and begging and desperate attempts at negotiation. He had never seen amusement. "However," James continued, "I must correct some facts before we proceed." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data crystal. He placed it on the central pedestal, and the chamber's systems projected its contents into the air. Images appeared. Video recordings, communication logs, military deployment records. 3 months ago, James explained, Dravani warships entered the Sol system without permission. They scanned our planet. They took genetic samples from our population without consent, and they transmitted a message to their homeworld. He paused, letting the tension build. That message contained plans to harvest Earth for biological resources. Your empire intended to process 7 billion human beings for genetic material. You did not come to our system by accident, Commander. You came to evaluate us as livestock. The chamber fell silent. Our patrol ships did not attack yours, James continued. They defended our home against an invasion force that had already decided we were not people, but products. Thrax surged forward, his bladed arms raised. Lies! You have fabricated this evidence to justify your aggression. The evidence was gathered from your own communication networks, Commander. James smiled again. Your species uses quantum-encrypted systems that you believe are unbreakable. You were wrong. More images appeared in the air. Maps of the Dravani Empire. Fleet positions. Supply routes. Security codes. Intelligence that should have been impossible for humanity to possess. We have been inside your networks for 2 months, James said. We know where your emperor sleeps. We know where your larvae are cultivated. We know every secret your empire has spent 10,000 years hiding. Thrax's compound eyes widened. For the first time in his long life, he felt something he had not experienced since he was HHS. Fear. High Arbiter, James said. Turning back to Velox, humanity did not come to the stars looking for war. We came to explore. We came to learn. We came hoping to find friends among the infinite worlds. His voice hardened. But we will not be harvested. We will not be processed. And we will never, ever kneel to those who see us as nothing more than Kad. Resources to be consumed. He reached into his pocket again and produced a second data crystal. This is Earth's formal response to the Dravani threat. The crystal activated. A document appeared in the air, bearing the seals of every nation on Earth. It was a declaration of war, not a defensive statement, not a request for protection, not a plea for the Council to intervene. Humanity was declaring offensive war against the Dravani Empire. The chamber erupted into chaos. Species that had been conquered by the Dravani screamed warnings. Free species fled their pods, desperate to distance themselves from whatever retaliation was coming. The Dravani delegation stood frozen, unable to process what they were seeing. High Arbiter Velox hammered his staff against his throne, demanding order. But the noise was overwhelming. James Walker stood calmly at the center of the storm. You have one standard galactic cycle to withdraw all forces from human space, he called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. After that, we will come for you. He turned and walked toward the exit. Commander Thrax, he said over his shoulder, your empire has spent 10,000 years conquering species that surrendered before the first shot was fired. Species that evolved on peaceful worlds with gentle climates. Species that never learned how to fight. He stopped at the door and looked back. Earth is not a peaceful world. Our sun bombards us with radiation. Our planet shakes with earthquakes and erupts with volcanoes. 70% of our surface is covered with water that would kill most species in minutes. We evolved as hunters who chased our prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. His smile widened. You have never faced a species from a death world. You have never faced humanity. And by the time you understand what that means, it will already be too late. The doors closed behind him, in the silence that followed. High Arbiter Velox looked at the assembled representatives of 342 species. He had watched civilizations rise and fall for 6 million years. But for the first time, he wondered if he was about to witness something entirely new. The birth of a power that even the Dravani could not stop. 72 hours after the declaration of war, the galaxy held its breath. On the throne world of Dravos Prime, Emperor Kalthos sat in his chamber of bones. The room was decorated with the skulls of 17 conquered species. Each one represented a civilization that had dared to resist the Dravani Empire. Each one was a reminder of what happened to those who refused to submit. Supreme Commander Thrax knelt before the Emperor, his compound eyes fixed on the floor. "Explain this failure," Kalthos demanded. His voice was cold and ancient. He had ruled the Empire for 3,000 years. He had personally ordered the extinction of 6 species. He did not tolerate mistakes. "The humans possess intelligence capabilities we did not anticipate, my Emperor," Thrax said carefully. "They have penetrated our communication networks. They know our fleet positions, our supply routes, our security protocols, then change them. We have. But their hackers adapt faster than we can respond. It is as if they learned our systems before we even knew they existed." Kalthos rose from his throne. He towered over Thrax, his armored body casting shadows across the bone-decorated walls. "You are telling me that a species we discovered only 5 years ago has already surpassed our information security? A species that has not even colonized beyond their own moon?" "Yes, my Emperor." Kalthos was silent for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been laughter. "Interesting. They are more capable than we assumed. But capability alone does not win wars." He turned to his advisors. "Mobilize the conquest fleet. 50,000 ships. I want their planet reduced to ash within 30 rotations." Thrax hesitated. "My Emperor, given their intelligence capabilities, perhaps a more cautious approach. Caution is for the weak. These mammals have one world, one fleet, one colony. We have 17,000 systems. There is no strategy that can overcome such numbers. Crush them and let their destruction serve as a warning to any species that dares to resist us again." The orders were transmitted across the Empire. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity prepared for the storm. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Director Maria Santos reviewed the tactical displays with cold focus. She was 60 years old, with silver hair and eyes that had seen too many wars. She had commanded Earth's Secret Defense Initiative for 15 years, waiting for the day that would finally come. That day had arrived. 50,000 ships, General Thomas Okonkwo reported. He stood beside her, arms clasped behind his back. "They will arrive in 28 days. "Right on schedule," Maria said calmly. "Operation Fenrir is ready? All assets are in position. The packs are hidden throughout the outer system. The Dravani will never see them coming." Maria nodded. She turned to another screen, where Ambassador Walker's face appeared via secure communication. "The Council?" she asked. "Chaos," James replied. "The Dravani are demanding that other species join their assault on Earth. They are calling us a threat to galactic stability. But nobody is volunteering. Are we gaining any allies?" "Not openly. But I have received private messages from 23 species. They are watching us carefully. If we survive the first assault, they may reconsider their positions." Maria smiled grimly. "Then we need to do more than survive. We need to win so completely that the entire galaxy understands what they are dealing with." She ended the call and turned back to the tactical displays. 50,000 enemy ships were approaching Earth. It was the largest fleet the Dravani had ever assembled for a single target, and it was walking directly into a trap on the Galactic Council Station. Ambassador Walker returned to his quarters. He knew the next few weeks would determine humanity's fate. Either Earth would prove it could stand against the galaxy's greatest empire, or it would become another skull in the Emperor's collection. He was not surprised. When his door chimed at midnight, the being that entered was unlike anything James had seen before. She was tall and thin, with skin that glowed faintly violet. Her eyes were silver, and they seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Ambassador Walker," she said, her voice like music. "I am called Lyris. I represent interests that cannot be named." James gestured for her to sit. "Interests opposed to the Dravani? Interests that have been waiting for someone like you." Lyris settled into a chair, her movements graceful and deliberate. Do you know why no species in Council space has ever successfully resisted the Dravani? Their military power. That is part of it. But there is something more important. She leaned forward. The translation matrix. James frowned. The system that allows all species to communicate? Yes, but it does more than translate languages. The Dravani designed it 3,000 years ago. They embedded hidden functions within it. Emotional suppressors that reduce aggression. Cognitive filters that encourage submission. Chemical triggers that induce fear responses. The implications hit James like a physical blow. You are saying the entire council has been mind-controlled? Not controlled, conditioned. Every species that uses the matrix has been subtly manipulated to accept Dravani dominance. They feel fear when they should feel anger. They feel submission when they should feel resistance. Their own minds have been turned against them, but not humans. Lyris smiled. Your neural architecture is incompatible with the Matrix's conditioning protocols. Your species evolved too differently, too violently, too unpredictably. The system was designed to control gentle creatures from peaceful worlds. It cannot touch minds that were forged in the fires of a death world. James sat back, processing this revelation. The council was not merely a political body. It was a prison. And the Dravani were not merely conquerors. They were parasites feeding on deliberately weakened prey. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Because my people discovered the truth 3,000 years ago. The Dravani responded by destroying our homeworld and scattering our survivors across the galaxy. Lyris's silver eyes hardened. We have been waiting for a species that could resist the conditioning. A species that could fight back. A species that could break the chains that have enslaved the galaxy for millennia. She rose from her chair. When the moment comes, we will broadcast the truth to every species in council space. We will show them that their submission has been manufactured. And when they realize they have been slaves, her skin flared brilliant white, they will remember what it means to be free. She moved toward the door, then paused. Win your battle, Ambassador. Show the galaxy that the Dravani can bleed. The rest will follow. The door closed behind her. James sat alone in the darkness, his mind racing. The war had just become something much larger than survival. It had become a battle for the soul of an entire galaxy. And humanity was the only species that could fight it. On Dravos Prime, Emperor Kalthos received troubling news. One of his spies on the council station had observed the human ambassador meeting with a being from an unknown species, a species that matched the description of the ancient enemy, the Luminari. Kalthos whispered, "They still exist." He had believed them extinct. His ancestors had hunted them across 100 worlds, destroying their civilization for the crime of discovering the truth about the translation metrics. But some had escaped. Some had hidden. Some had waited. And now they were talking to the humans. Accelerate the fleet, the Emperor commanded. I want Earth burned within 15 rotations. And find the Luminary agent. Kill her slowly. His advisors scrambled to obey. Across the galaxy, the pieces were moving into position. The Dravani believed. They were sending a fleet to crush a primitive species. They did not understand that they were walking into a war that would reshape everything, and somewhere in the void between stars, humanity smiled. The Dravani conquest fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. Admiral Korath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Endless Hunger. 50,000 warships spread across the void behind him, their weapons charged and ready. It was the largest fleet the Empire had ever assembled for a single target, and before them, floating alone in the darkness, was a single human vessel. One ship. Korath clicked his mandibles in amusement. They send one ship to face us. The human vessel was small, perhaps 200 meters long. It made no attempt to flee or attack. It simply waited, as if watching the approaching armada with curiosity rather than fear. "Open a channel," Korath commanded. "I want to hear them beg." The communication link established. A human face appeared on the display. Male, middle-aged, with calm eyes and a steady voice. "This is Captain Daniel Ross of the UNSC Athena. You are entering human space without authorization. Turn back now, or you will be destroyed." Korath burst into laughter. His bridge crew joined him, their chittering echoing through the organic chambers of the flagship. "You threaten us? One ship against 50,000? Your species is truly insane." Captain Ross's expression did not change. "We warned you." The channel closed. Korath waved dismissively. "Target that vessel. Destroy it, and then we proceed to—" The words died in his throat. Across his tactical display, red signatures were flickering. Ships were going dark throughout the formation. Distress signals flooded the communication channels from every sector of the fleet. "What is happening?" Korath screamed. "Report." "Admiral." His sensor officer was trembling. "Ships are being disabled across the entire formation. We are detecting unknown contacts emerging from—" "Everywhere." On the forward display, Korath finally saw them. They came from nowhere. Not from hyperspace. Not from behind cover. They simply appeared, as if they had been invisible all along. Small ships, barely larger than fighters, moving with impossible speed, and they were everywhere. The human vessels tore through the Dravani formation like wolves through a flock of sheep. But they were not destroying ships. They were targeting engines, communications, weapons systems. One by one, the mighty warships of the Dravani Empire were being crippled, left to drift helplessly in the void. "They are not killing us," Korath realized with growing horror. "They are hurting us." He watched as his fleet was systematically dismembered. Ships that tried to flee found human vessels waiting for them. Ships that tried to form defensive clusters were torn apart from within. Ships that tried to fire their weapons discovered their targeting systems were filled with corrupted data. The human ambassador had not been lying. They had been inside Dravani networks for months. And they had not simply gathered intelligence. They had planted the seeds of the fleet's destruction dot in 3 hours. 50,000 Dravani warships were reduced to drifting hulks. Not one was destroyed outright. Not one crew was killed unnecessarily. They were simply stopped. Then Captain Ross's face appeared on Korath's display again. "Admiral, humanity accepts your surrender. Please stand by for boarding parties." "Boarding parties?" Korath sputtered. "You cannot possibly. We are already aboard, Admiral." Korath spun around, and his hearts nearly stopped, standing on his own bridge. Having somehow bypassed every security system on his flagship was a squad of human soldiers. They wore black armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons were trained on every officer present. The squad leader removed her helmet. She was young, with dark hair and cold eyes. A scar ran down her left cheek. "Lieutenant Maya Torres, UNSC Special Forces," she said. "Sir, I need you to step away from the command console." Korath's bladed arms twitched toward her. "Please understand something, Admiral," Torres said calmly. "We studied your species extensively before this engagement. We know exactly how fast you can move, how hard you can strike, and where your vital organs are located. If you try to attack, you will die before your blade moves 6 inches." She smiled pleasantly. "But we prefer to take you alive. Your testimony before the Galactic Council will be valuable." Korath's compound eyes moved between the human soldiers. 4 of them against his bridge crew of 30. They showed no fear. They stood among enemies that could tear them apart, and they looked bored. "How?" Korath finally asked. "How did you defeat us?" Torres considered the question. You spent 10,000 years conquering species that surrendered before the first shot was fired. Your tactics are designed for slaughter, not combat. You never learned how to fight an enemy that fights back. She gestured toward the display, where the crippled Giovanni fleet drifted in the void. And you never imagined that anyone would be crazy enough to let you get this close before springing the trap. On the Galactic Council Station, Ambassador Walker watched the battle footage with quiet satisfaction. 50,000 ships neutralized. 0 human casualties. The most powerful fleet the Giovanni had ever assembled, stopped cold by a force 1/10 its size. The council chamber was in chaos. Species that had spent millennia cowering before the Giovanni were struggling to process what they had witnessed. Representatives were shouting in 100 languages, demanding explanations, expressing disbelief. Then a new voice cut through the noise. Lyris stepped into the central speaking area. Her violet skin blazed with inner light. Behind her stood delegates from 12 species, their postures defiant. "Citizens of the council," she announced, "we have something to show you." She activated a data crystal, and the chamber's displays shifted. Schematics appeared. Code sequences, neural mapping, biological analysis, layer upon layer of evidence, carefully compiled over 3,000 years. "This is the truth of the translation matrix," Lyris declared. "For 10,000 years, the Giovanni have manipulated every species in this chamber. Your thoughts have been filtered. Your emotions have been dampened. Your capacity for resistance has been chemically suppressed." The chamber fell silent. "You are not naturally peaceful. You are not naturally submissive. You have been caged inside your own minds, trained to obey without ever knowing you were being trained." She turned to face the Giovanni delegation, now huddled in fear. "But there is one species their conditioning cannot touch. One species whose minds evolved so differently that the Matrix cannot affect them." She pointed at Ambassador Walker. "Humanity is immune. And humanity has just proven that the Giovanni can bleed." The chamber erupted. Not in chaos this time, but in something far more dangerous. 342 species, awakening from a 10,000-year nightmare, suddenly remembered what it felt like to be angry. On the captured flagship, Admiral Korath sat in his cell and listened to the broadcast. He heard the revelation about the translation matrix. He heard the truth about how his empire had controlled the galaxy dot, and for the first time in his long life. He wondered if everything he had believed was a lie. Lieutenant Torres appeared at his cell door. "The council has voted to strip the Giovanni of their seat," she said. "Your emperor is demanding retaliation. He is mobilizing every ship in the empire for a second assault on Earth." Korath looked at her with tired, compound eyes. "You cannot defeat 300,000 ships. Maybe not." Torres leaned against the doorframe. "But we do not have to defeat them alone. The galaxy is waking up, Admiral. Species that have been enslaved for millennia are starting to remember what freedom feels like." She paused. "The question is, which side do you want to be on when this is over?" Korath was silent for a long moment. Then he began to speak. "Emperor, Kalthos received the news of his fleet's defeat in silence. His advisors clustered at the edges of the throne room, none willing to speak. The bones of 17 species decorated the walls around them. Kalthos had personally crushed the skulls of 6 of those species. His rage, when it came, would be legendary, but the rage did not come. Instead, the ancient emperor rose slowly from his throne. He moved to a window that looked out across Dravos Prime, the capital of an empire that had never known defeat. "How many ships escaped?" he asked quietly. "None, my emperor," Supreme Commander Thrax answered. "All 50,000 vessels were captured. Their crews are being detained by the humans. Detained. Not killed. Not even harmed. We do not understand why, my emperor." Kalthos turned, and his compound eyes held something his subordinates had never seen before: uncertainty. "I understand," he said. "They are not trying to defeat us. They are trying to humiliate us. Every ship they capture, every soldier they spare, it is a message. They are showing the galaxy that we can be beaten without cost." He looked at the strategic display where the captured fleet was being towed to human space. An enemy we destroyed would be forgotten. An enemy we exterminated would be mourned. But an enemy that makes us look like fools will be remembered, Thrax finished. Yes, the Emperor's mandibles clicked with bitter admiration. These humans understand war in ways we never imagined. They do not fight for territory or resources. They fight for perception. He turned to his advisors. Mobilize everything. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon we possess. We will destroy Earth even if it costs us half the Empire. His compound eyes gleamed with ancient hatred. And send word to our vassal species. I want their fleets as well. Let us see how the humans fare against the combined might of 17,000 systems. The orders were transmitted across the galaxy, but the Empire's foundations were already cracking. The revelation about the translation matrix had spread beyond the Council Station. Species that had served the Dravani for millennia suddenly understood why they had served. The psychological conditioning was still technically in effect, but now they knew it existed, and knowing it existed made them furious. On the agricultural world of the Sara 7, workers who had spent centuries growing food for their masters rose up against the Dravani overseers. The uprising was brutal and swift. Within hours, the entire planet was free for the first time in 3,000 years. On the forge world of Kelax 9, industrial species that had built Dravani warships for generations turned their factories to new purposes. Weapons flowed not to the Empire's armories, but to secret caches scattered across 100 systems. On conquered worlds throughout the galaxy, species that had forgotten how to resist began to remember Dot, and everywhere they looked to humanity for guidance. Ambassador Walker received the delegations in a conference room, hastily converted into an alliance chamber. Representatives from 30 species had arrived in the first day alone. By the end of the week, the number had swelled to over 60. They came with offers of resources, intelligence, and soldiers. They came with ancient grievances and plans for revenge. They came with hope that humanity would lead them to freedom. Walker handled each meeting with careful diplomacy. But Director Santos watched from the shadows with growing concern. "We are not conquerors," she reminded him during a brief rest. "We cannot become what we are fighting against. I know." Walker rubbed his tired eyes. "But they need leadership. They need someone to show them the path. Then show them that the path is their own. We did not free them. We simply proved that freedom was possible. The rest must come from within." Walker nodded slowly. "The Emperor is mobilizing 300,000 ships. They will arrive in 20 days. Santos smiled grimly. "Let them come. We have been preparing for this since before you were born, Ambassador. The question is not whether we can survive. The question is how many of them we can convince to stop fighting before we are forced to show our full strength." Meanwhile, on the captured Dravani flagship, Lieutenant Torres was conducting interrogations. Admiral Korath had proven surprisingly cooperative after his initial shock faded. The revelation about the translation matrix had broken something inside him. A lifetime of assumed superiority had crumbled to dust. "You truly did not know," Torres observed. "About the conditioning? No." Korath's voice was hollow. "We believed the matrix was simply a communication tool. We believed other species submitted because they recognized our natural superiority. And now? Now I understand that we built an empire on lies. We did not conquer through strength. We cheated. His compound eyes met Torres's gaze. "What will you do with us?" "That depends on you. We are not in the business of executing prisoners, but we cannot release soldiers who might rejoin the fight against us. And if we chose not to rejoin?" Torres raised an eyebrow. "Are you offering defection, Admiral?" Korath was silent for a long moment. Behind his compound eyes, 10,000 years of certainty was being rewritten. "I am offering a question," he finally said. "A question that many in your custody are asking. What if we were wrong? What if everything we believed about our empire was a lie? What if the species we conquered were not lesser beings, but victims of the same manipulation that blinded us?" He leaned forward. "Lieutenant, I have killed more beings than I can count. I have burned worlds and exterminated civilizations. I believed I was serving a noble cause. Now I know I was simply the weapon of monsters who hid their evil behind technology and tradition." His voice dropped to a whisper. "I cannot undo what I have done, but perhaps I can help ensure it is never done again." Torres studied the alien admiral for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Let me make some calls." 48 hours later, Admiral Korath stood before the Galactic Council. He was flanked by human guards, but he walked freely. His thorax no longer displayed his campaign honors. He had stripped them off himself, casting them into the void as his shuttle approached the station. High Arbiter Velox looked at him with ancient, weary eyes. "You may speak, Admiral Korath." Korath took a breath. "I came here prepared to die defending my empire," he began. "I believed in the righteousness of the Dravani cause. I believed that lesser species existed to serve us." His compound eyes swept the chamber. "I was wrong." He activated a data crystal, projecting his own memories into the air. Memories of conquest, of slaughter, of species pleading for mercy that he had denied without hesitation. "I did these things," he said. "I and millions like me. We believed we were superior. We believed other species were animals to be harvested. We believed because we were conditioned to believe, but the conditioning does not excuse us. We chose to conquer. We chose to kill." His voice hardened. "And now I choose something different. I choose to testify against my emperor and my species. I choose to stand with those who would tear down everything I helped build. I choose—" He looked at Ambassador Walker, standing quietly at the edge of the chamber. "I choose humanity." The chamber erupted into noise, but above the chaos, a single message was transmitted to every ship in the Dravani fleet. The Emperor's own admiral had turned against him, and 300,000 ships, crewed by beings who were just beginning to question everything they had been taught, received the message with very different reactions than the Emperor would have hoped. The final battle was coming, and the galaxy would never be the same. 300,000. Dravani warships hung at the edge of the Sol. System: Emperor Kalthos commanded from his personal battle station, a moon-sized construct bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Around him, the combined might of an empire that had never known defeat prepared for the final assault. But they were not alone. Scattered throughout the formation were ships from 17 vassal species. Species that had spent millennia building weapons for their masters. Species that now possessed those weapons themselves. Species that had been listening to Admiral Korath's testimony. "The humans have deployed their fleet," an officer reported. 15,000 vessels, positioned between us and their homeworld. 15,000 against 300,000. Kalthos clicked his mandibles with satisfaction. Perhaps they have finally realized how hopeless their situation is. "My Emperor," Thrax approached cautiously, "I must report concerning developments among our vassal contingents. Communication intercepts suggest widespread dissent. Dissent is natural before battle. They will fight because they have no choice. My Emperor, I believe the situation is more serious. Silence. All ships advance. I want Earth burning within the hour. The fleet surged forward. On the bridge of the UNSC Athena, Captain Daniel Ross watched them come. 300,000 ships, his tactical officer said quietly. Even with our advantages, the math is difficult. The math was never supposed to be in our favor alone, Ross replied calmly. Our job is not to win this battle by ourselves. He opened a channel to Director Santos. They are committed. What is the political situation? Developing, Santos replied. We have confirmed support from 53 species within the enemy formation. They are waiting for the signal. And the others? Uncertain. The conditioning is still active. Many species are struggling against instincts that tell them to submit. We need something to break through. Ross nodded. Then let us give them something. He opened a fleet-wide channel. Not encrypted. Not directed. Broadcast openly for any vessel to receive. This is Captain Daniel Ross of Earth to all ships in the approaching formation. I know many of you are serving the Dravani against your will. I know you have been told that resistance is futile, that humanity will be crushed, that this battle is already decided. He paused, letting his words carry across the void. You are wrong. The Dravani have lied to you for 10,000 years. They have suppressed your natural courage. They have convinced you that you are helpless. But you are not helpless. You have ships. You have weapons. You have a choice that your ancestors were never allowed to make. The human fleet spread into formation, thin and scattered, almost inviting attack. In a few minutes, this battle will begin. The Dravani will order you to attack us, and many of you will obey, because you have never been given a reason to do otherwise. But I am giving you that reason now. His voice hardened. We are not conquerors. We are not trying to rule you. We are trying to set you free. And when this battle is over, when the Dravani are defeated and their empire is dust, we will not demand your servitude. We will simply offer our hand in friendship. He smiled. You have been slaves long enough. Today, you can be free. The channel closed. For a long moment, nothing happened. The Dravani fleet continued its advance. Then the first vassal ship broke formation. It was a Thessaron cruiser. One of the graceful vessels that Lyris's people had been forced to build for their masters. It turned away from the human line and pointed its weapons at the nearest Dravani battleship. Thessaran vessel, resume formation. The Emperor's command cut through every channel. Obey or be destroyed. The Thessaran captain's response was to fire. Her first shots struck the Dravani ship's engine section, crippling it instantly. Other Thessaran vessels followed her lead, peeling away from the formation. Then the Kellex. Ford ships opened fire on the Dravani. Ammunition transports. Then the Prixian scouts used their superior speed to dart through the Forma. Tie-in. Broadcasting jamming frequencies. Then 60,000 vassal ships turned on their masters. The Dravani fleet dissolved into chaos. Emperor. Kalthos screamed orders that no one obeyed. His personal guard tried to seize control of the battle station's weapons, but they discovered that the human data breach had been more thorough than anyone suspected. Security systems locked them out. The station's computer refused to acknowledge Dravani commands, and through the chaos, the human fleet advanced. They did not rush to join the slaughter. They moved methodically, targeting only Dravani vessels that continued to fight. Vassal ships that had turned against their masters were left alone, allowed to settle their own ancient debts. The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, the Dravani Empire existed only in history. 140,000 ships had been destroyed or captured. The Emperor's battle station drifted powerless, its weapons cold, its crew negotiating surrender. And Earth. The blue marble that had started everything hung untouched against the stars. 3 weeks later, Ambassador Walker stood before the Galactic Council. The chamber was transformed. Species that had not spoken in millennia were debating openly. The translation matrix had been reprogrammed, its conditioning protocols removed. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Council was truly free. High Arbiter Velox turned to Walker with something like wonder. "Ambassador, this Council has assembled to recognize the dissolution of the Dravani Empire and the establishment of a new order. Before we proceed, we wish to know, what does humanity want?" It was the question everyone had been asking. Humanity had destroyed the most powerful empire in history. They possessed weapons that could challenge any fleet. They had the loyalty of species who owed them everything. They could demand anything. Rule everything. Walker considered the question. Then he smiled. Not the wolf smile he had worn when declaring war, but something gentler. "We want friends," he said. "We want trading partners and scientific collaborators. We want to explore this incredible galaxy alongside species who share our curiosity." He looked around the chamber. "We did not come to the stars to conquer. We came because we could not resist the call of the unknown. We fought the Dravani because we believed the galaxy deserved better than slavery and fear." He spread his hands. "What does humanity want?" "Exactly what we have always wanted, to reach for the horizon and see what lies beyond. And now that the shadow of the Empire has lifted, we hope you will join us." The chamber was silent. Then Lyris rose from her seat among the Thessaran delegation. Her skin blazed white. "On behalf of the Thessaran people, I accept humanity's offer of friendship. Let this be the first treaty of a new age." Other voices followed. Telex, Prixian, species whose names Walker did not know, but whose gratitude was clear. Even Admiral Korath, standing among the pardoned prisoners, inclined his massive head. "The Dravani have much to answer for," he said quietly. "But perhaps those of us who wish to build rather than destroy can find a place in this new order." High Arbiter Velox listened to the rising chorus of voices. For the first time in 6 million years, he felt something other than weary resignation. He felt hope. "Then let it be recorded," he declared, "that on this day the Galactic Council enters a new era. An era born from the courage of a species that refused to kneel." He turned to Walker. "Ambassador, on behalf of 342 worlds, I thank humanity for reminding us what we could be." Walker nodded, feeling the weight of the moment. "The honor is ours. Now let us see what future we can build together." And somewhere in the back of the chamber, an ancient Thessaran, who remembered the time before the Dravani heard the words and began to weep. The galaxy had been asleep for 10,000 years. Humanity had finally woken it. Up, and across the stars, a new age was beginning.